Welcome to Tara Institute. My name is Damien, and I'll be leading this month's Monday nights. And so as per the normal practice, each Monday night teacher sort of picks their topic, and over a period of time we cover a lot of topics. So it's not a controlled process. So this month I try to talk about something that is sort of relevant to me at the moment. So I've been thinking recently that I first got involved in Buddhism in 1982, which I think is starting to be quite a long time ago. And then I've been thinking, well, that's an awful long time, but so what have I got to show for it? After all that time, and sort of like I've read a lot of books, so I've got a lot of knowledge. And then, there's this Tibetan saying that if there's a gap between your knowledge and your practice, then at the end of this life, that gap is big enough that you can slip through that gap. Which is sort of saying that despite all your knowledge or all of your study and that at the end of this life, it's of no benefit to you. You sort of slip out without it actually doing you any good. So there's a bit of an issue here, really, for not just for Buddhism, but for all religions, and even for secular ethics or any other aspirational behavioural approach to life. Your wish to be good, your wish to be kind, your wish to be thoughtful, to be patient, to be generous, all of these things that our knowledge is not lacking. Our understanding is not lacking. Our comprehension, our ability to do it is not lacking. But in the end, we see that within my own behaviour, there is a gap. There's a gap between that knowledge and the actual practice. So, and I guess this month is what I'm trying to sort of trying to analyse and work through, like for myself and also to discuss with you, is this what is the blockage, or what is this gap that we have that we aspire to be a good person, let's say, but day after day, if we look, we see there's plenty of evidence where my behaviour or my thinking, my behaviour, my speech does not embody that aspiration, And so, of course, we can live in a dream world where we have an aspiration to be good and we think we're good. So here I'm talking about actually looking at your behaviour and really examining whether the things you just say to people, the actions that you do, reflect this aspirational Buddhist or this aspirational Christian or this aspirational ethical person that you want to be. So we can examine that. We can examine that situation. And so I guess this was prompted by a thing that Geshe Doga had said a few weeks back in the study group on Tuesday nights. And it's a quote from Lama Tsongkhapa. So Lama Tsongkhapa, who's this figure represented by the statue here, the middle one here. So Lama Tsongkhapa, he lived about 500 years ago. And he had said that the real practice of the 10 virtues or avoiding the 10 non-virtues is when in your mind there is not the slightest inclination, the slightest inclination towards those non-virtues is completely resisted. So, we can look at the way we think in this way that, okay, I may not kill, I may not steal, I may not sort of commit adultery, lie, slander, speak harsh words or gossip and all this. But in my mind, I've got all these little aspirations of, lust or, harming somebody, So in my mind, so the sort of the mind is the abode of the scoundrel. That within my mind, I think I have this freedom to still think about adultery or about lust or about hurting somebody or about, lying, deceiving somebody, imagining some humiliation of somebody. So like within my mind, even though I might externally not particularly engage in those things, but in my mind, it's sort of like the abode of the lying, cheating scoundrel who, indulges in their mind in anger towards others or hatred towards others. So we see this in the public sphere, I think, as well, that people hide a whole lot of resentments and anger and prejudice and hatred, but their voice, their words, their actions appear to be kind or appear to be generous and considerate. So then, for my own case, I was sort of thinking that we have a progression to make. Let's say from the beginning, let's say we talk in terms of Buddhist terms, but this really applies to any sort of ethical approach, that we hear it and we might have a reaction, yeah, that's common sense. We all sort of say, oh, yeah, I went to the Buddhist centre and, really all that they were saying there was just common sense. And it ties in with what I feel naturally. We say these things that it resonates. That what we hear resonates with, oh yeah, that's right, kindness, love and compassion for others, peacefulness, stability, not being agitated, stable mind, resilience, wholeness. We say all this, common sense, yeah, that's all, it resonates with me, common sense. So we all have that experience of an aspirational, like an aspirational to be a good person, this aspiration to be a better person, a good person. But whether we are or not requires some analysis as to how we deal with people, and how, particularly, I think how we deal often with people who are a lot weaker than us or less powerful than us, dealing with people who are in a lower position than us. The real test is not how we talk to the Prime Minister or the Pope or the Dalai Lama, but the real test is how do we talk to the people or to the creatures even that are lower than us. Do we apply those same standards of kindness, of consideration and offering dignity and respect to ants or to dogs, cats, spiders or whatever? So we can check our own sort of interaction with others. And so I guess that's part of what I've been saying, for myself, is thinking about that that behaviour that, like, from my side, I think in a way, I don't lack knowledge of Buddhism. You know, after 40, whatever it is, nearly 40 years, I don't lack knowledge of Buddhism. But I do lack the ability to actually change my thinking or change my behaviour. So I guess the point that I want to talk about this month is this question that, I think it applies to all of us, that we all may have an aspiration to be kind, to be generous, to be affectionate, to be tolerant, to be patient, you know, to be non-competitive, to be engaging, to be inclusive of others. You know, we might, I think, hopefully we all have that aspiration, or at least the recognition that those qualities, when I experience those qualities from others, they make me feel embraced, or make me feel happy, make me feel respected. And so we see that those qualities are good qualities. But am I actually embracing those qualities in my own behaviour? And not just in my behaviour, also in my thinking. And we know that, you know, you see somebody looking like they're, you know, really engaging with somebody, friendly thing, and then they turn around and their attitude is very different. They swear at them or they abuse them. You know, so we see this sort of thing, that there's the ability to pretend that you are a certain way, but in your thinking you're actually the complete reverse. And so for us to protect against that, so I think the real gist of what I'm talking about here is how do we move from that aspirational to be a good person, to actually engaging in that, and to see that, you know, I think if I analyse my behaviour, I can see not just in my thinking, where it's clear in my thinking that I still have a lot of negativity, but even in my actions, I can see that there are issues with that gap between my belief system and my behavioural system. So I guess this is the thing. How do we breach that gap? Okay, so, and I've been thinking about this, you know, and so there's a traditional Buddhist approach, and I think the traditional Buddhist approach is mainly focused on us accepting the consequences of our actions. So I think the traditional Buddhist approach is particularly about generating a faith in action and its results. So this cause and effect, so that we can fully accept that there are consequences from negative behaviour. And the idea is that if we fully accept that there's consequences of our negative behaviour, then we understand that engaging in lying or stealing or killing or whatever will have a consequence that for me will be a suffering or a miserable consequence. But still, that doesn't guarantee that I will practice. So again, the traditional approach is that although I might believe that lying will result in some sort of future negative consequence for me, right? But that doesn't mean that I'll stop lying, Because the actual reason that we engage in lying, killing, stealing, or whatever is that we think there's an advantage to me. We think there's an advantage that I will be served well by lying. That I will have happiness, I'll have wealth, I'll have friends, I'll have a partnership, a relationship, a good deal at work, a better pay, I'll have a better job, I won't get fines from the police, I won't get abused by my wife, I won't get treated badly by my children or my neighbours or whatever if I lie. So that we have this construction that it's to my benefit that I lie. So from the sort of Buddhist approach is you have to understand that the consequence of lying will be negative and that the benefits of lying are zero. We have the appearance of some short-term benefit, but it's deceptive because the actual consequences of lying are always negative. So, but we don't believe that. The reality in our lives is that we don't believe that, wiping up a whole lot of ants off the kitchen bench is somehow a negative action. We don't think that exterminating all the bilbies and the whatever else in the forests is a negative thing. We don't think that. We don't think that's the case. We don't think it's the case that butchering millions of animals every year is somehow negative. So, even though, we study, we go to church, we listen to a thing, we read books, we read about, secular ethics or whatever, and still it identifies that there's a consequence, a negative consequence. But still I don't engage in the virtue because it suits my ego or my situation that I think it's okay, and I ignore the consequence. And I might think, well, consequences, where are they? I can't see them. So we think, well, look at all these rich people that are lying and cheating. Nothing's happened to them, so therefore it must be okay. So we do all this sort of process where we're just widening this gap between, the aspirational being a good person and then this sort of compromised situation that we find ourselves in. And then, again, from the traditional Buddhist approach thing, we sort of think, well, I got plenty of time. I've got plenty of time. Maybe on my deathbed I'll sort of do a few prayers, say a few nice things. Hopefully there's a Lama there to bless me. Everything will be right. We have this sort of confidence that somehow things will be okay because I'm a good person. Okay, I do a few bad things, but I am a good person. Therefore, everything will be okay because the Lama's going to come, the priest is going to come and give me a blessing. I'll get another crack at it, and next time I promise I'll do better. We do these sort of negotiations. So, there's a whole lot of things that we can see in ourselves that are postponing taking our own belief system seriously. It's sort of like, we say, I want to be a good person. I want to practice loving kindness. I want to recognise what others are doing. I want to help them. But, that's for later. That's not for now. Right now I have to look after myself. I've got some important targets to meet in my life. These take precedence. These take precedence over everything. I have to look after myself first, and all that stuff, patience is for wussies, loving kindness, no, it's not loving kindness, you have to be tough. You hear this stuff all the time. And even internally, we may even say these things to ourselves. We justify different behaviours that we do from, a whole collection of different ideas. These are just ideas, you've got to be tough, dog eat dog world, all these sort of things that, the world's a difficult place, then you have to be a rugged, you have to be aggressive, you've got to be confrontationalist, you have to stand up for yourself and fight. All these sorts of things that are embedded in everybody's psyche. So, how can we move from that? So this is really the sort of point that I'm considering with it, in myself, is this. How do we move from that, the convenience, let's say the convenience of being self-centred. There's a convenience in being self-centred. It's territory that we are very familiar with. The acceptance of being rude or being harsh, being miserly, being aggressive, being competitive, being arrogant and superiority, pride. There's a very sort of habitual comfort for us in being like that, because we've been like that for a very long time. And so it's a sort of like a safe territory for us. And so here is to try to understand, how do you shift that to some aspirational model of yourself? Some, from a Buddhist point of view, being kind, being patient, being affectionate, showing love and compassion even to your enemies. How do you get to that point? How do we get to a point where we take the consequences of our negative actions really seriously? So that you read about some of the great Buddhist saints, who would do extraordinary things not to harm others. They would do extraordinary things to save the lives of others, to put themselves in a lower place, to let the really sort of disturbed person have the victory. To let the really disturbed person have the victory. They'd put themselves into a low place. So I think, I was trying to approach this from, like my own thinking. How can we do this? And I think there's a couple of key things that's come up. One is, maybe the number one thing is, you have to be aware. You have to be aware of your own thinking and of your own behaviour. Have to have that mindfulness, the awareness of your own thinking. And then, so we have that awareness, we have that awareness, and then we have to have an apprehension of what that state is. It's sort of like a wisdom, a discriminating wisdom, which can see what is that awareness at that moment. So one is to be aware, and then secondly, to have knowledge of that awareness, what it is. Okay, So those two qualities are called mindfulness and alertness, or mindfulness and introspection. And so those two are critical, because otherwise we're flying blind in life. We're barreling through life, just reacting to external circumstances. So an external circumstance just comes in, and we have this habitual reaction to it without any sort of wisdom or any control or any apprehension or any choices. We're completely flying blind, because we just become a victim of circumstance and our own habituations without any ability to control them or to direct our behaviour in any other way. But that's not to blame anybody. That's not to blame anybody for that, because that's what everybody is doing. So the other thing to start to understand is that, I want happiness. I want happiness, and I want to be free from suffering. So the happiness that is easily apprehended, the happiness that is easily seen, and the suffering that is easily seen is the physical. The physical happiness and the physical suffering are easily seen. Hunger, thirst, desire, attachment, the pleasure, the clothing, the pleasure, the comfort, the food, the sensual touch, the smells, the sounds. These are the things that are easily apprehended to us as happiness and suffering. Pleasant sounds, unpleasant sounds. Pleasant tastes, unpleasant tastes. Pleasant touch, unpleasant touch. Good feelings, good physical feeling, unpleasant physical feeling. These are really easily apprehended by us. And so it's not unreasonable then that our big pursuit in life is the physical happiness and the freedom from physical suffering. So we want a good house, we want a good job, we want money, we want comfort, we want clothes, food, comfort, companions. We want all of these physical happinesses. And then we find that there's a sort of a sense of dissatisfaction. And the reason that there is this pervasive dissatisfaction is because not only do we require physical happiness, but we also require mental happiness. But the causes of mental happiness to us are a lot more obscure. It's hard for us to see what the causes of mental happiness are. So then, what happens to us is that we don't even think that mental happiness will just automatically follow if we have physical happiness. If we have physical comfort, good companion, wealth, good food and things, that automatically we will have mental happiness. But the causes of mental happiness are not food, sex, smells, taste, touch. They are not the causes of mental happiness. And so as a result, if we put all of our effort into physical happiness, we end up ignoring the causes of mental happiness, and we end up ignoring the activity of engaging in the causes of mental happiness, and so then we don't have mental happiness. And we end up, even if we're wealthy and have a beautiful companion, have good jobs, everybody praises us, we have a high position, and we have everything externally, we can be totally dissatisfied. And that's because we have completely ignored the causes of mental happiness. And so the causes of mental happiness are ultimately, they're much more important than the causes of physical happiness. So So because of that, I think it, probably more than anything, that enables us to ignore our aspirational beliefs. You know, that our aspirational beliefs about, let's say, being kind or being generous or being patient, showing love and affection, I think that if we're only seeking physical happiness and we are ignoring mental happiness, then I think that assists in us being able to ignore our own ethical value system. Anyway, that's something to think about. But whatever the reason is, to a large degree, we somehow find a way that we actually ignore our ethical value system. And it's so this month I want to sort of examine what is it that enables us to do that. You know, what are the sort of the blocks or the way of thinking that somehow enables me to ignore this aspirational goodness, let's say. Let's call it that, this aspiration for being a good person. What is it that enables me to ignore that? So if we think then back about the mindfulness and alertness, the main cause for generating that ability is meditation. You know, so through meditation we are able to bring the mind to a place of stability and focus. And so from the meditational session, it can benefit our mind after the meditational session by enabling the mindfulness and alertness to take place in our life. So that's a good motivation to have for engaging in meditation. So we'll do some meditation and we'll just focus on the breath. We'll just focus on the breath, the coming in and out, and 100% focus on that, you know, maybe the awareness of the breath, the appearance, the mental appearance of the breath, you know, that sort of thought of the breath coming in and going out. So we start off by adopting a good position, comfortable position, and become aware of where your mind is. You know, what are you thinking about? Is it past or future, somewhere else? So you bring it here, bring it within yourself, like right within yourself, not thinking about anybody else or any other external noises or anything, just right inside yourself. And try to let every thought drop away from your mind. So keep doing that process to every thought, not following the thought, just let it drop away until your mind is like completely clear of thought, and then turn your attention to the breath and keep your focus absolutely 100% on the breath. So you can just check on your mind, check your state of mind, and just review that meditation. You know, sort of looking at what happened for that last few minutes. So if there was daydreaming or sleepiness or, distraction, then recognize that, okay, there was distraction, there was daydreaming, there was sleepiness. And let's just repeat the meditation. So we think that it is very important that we can develop the power of the mind, the focusing power of the mind. This is so important. And particularly to develop the qualities of mindfulness and alertness. And so thinking that, great benefits can come from this meditation. Even if it's just 1 or 2 minutes, there are great benefits that will come. And so engage in it with, in a very, let's say, forceful way, like with earnest sort of diligent focus, and hold the mind 100% just on the breath. So just repeat the meditation for another few minutes, and strong determination to keep the focus on the breath. And you can just bring your concentration back to the room. So we've got some time now for any discussion or questions or comments, if anybody would like to say something. Or not? I'll repeat his question. So it's
how can one strengthen their conviction in ethical conduct?
Yeah. So the question is, how can you strengthen your conviction in ethical conduct? Did you have a particular type of ethical conduct that was at issue?
Well, it's more the desire for pleasure and the behaviours that come with it.
Yeah. So particularly around the desire for pleasure. Yeah. So human beings are said to reside in a thing called the desire realm. This, like from a Buddhist point of view, there's the different sort of presentation of existence, of a broad existence. Okay, so where we are is we are in the desire realm. And not meaning just sexual desire, but just desire in general for all of our sensory inputs, taste, touch, smell, everything. It's like our mode of operation is like, dislike, like that's where we're at. We are in the desire realm. We are creatures of desire. And so a point comes where through the recognition of action and the consequences that so there's a story about a monk who was approached by a woman who said, and the monk had a vow not to have sex, right, a celibate, right? And so the woman approached, and also he has the vow not to drink alcohol. So the woman approached and said, have this alcohol. No, I can't have the alcohol. Have sex with me. No, I can't have sex. Okay, if you don't drink the alcohol and have sex with me, I'll kill this lamb, So he thinks, well, we can't let her kill the lamb. So then he thinks, okay, well, what's the least offensive action? I'll drink the alcohol. So he drinks the alcohol, has sex with the woman, and then they kill the lamb and eat it. so it's sort of an example of the results of desire. The results of desire. So and the importance of maybe how we get drawn into things by thinking we're doing something which is not really wrong, but it just sort of escalates, that we become compromised. So, yeah. So, we're in the realm of desire. We are, each of us has got different dispositions. Some have more of a problem with lust, some have more of a problem with anger, some have more of a problem with miserliness or deception or something. So we've all got slightly different balances of behaviour. So the desire aspect, the lustful desire aspect, comes particularly from exaggerating the attractiveness of the person, and then thinking that possessing that action or possessing the person or engaging in the action will be a source of true happiness. A source of true happiness. And so for that reason we become so enamoured, so desirous, so worked up, because we have this projection that this is the source of complete and utter bliss and happiness. So, and on the physical level, there is some pleasure. There's obviously some pleasure, but in the bigger picture, that pleasure is totally meaningless. It's transient, it evaporates, it has no lasting benefit whatsoever, other than some mental fabrication where you dwell on the experience or the conquest or whatever, and then you fabricate a happiness on that basis. So for the very lustful person is to come to understand that there is actually no essence of real happiness or benefit in that pursuit, particularly in a bigger picture. And then the way you can overcome that is to look at the sacrifices. So the sacrifices that we might spend thousands of dollars, dinners, trips to Tahiti, whatever. We engage in a lot of expense and activity, wearing nice clothes, getting their hair done in a special way. There's so much effort and activity goes into it for this illusory pleasure. So that's the way you have to think about it, that the energy that is put into it, and if you can see that there is no ultimate benefit, then at some point you come to a realization that you have been deceived by this illusion of the bliss from sensual contact. And like I say, you have the nice theory here, and then you've got the practice here, and there can be a gap between the two. So I'm just saying this as a process to go through, Mark. So. Yeah.
So when you say that mental happiness will be a pure mind?
So the question is whether mental happiness is a pure mind. Certainly a pure, non-agitated, non-distracted, no anger, no hatred, no miserliness, no superiority, no competitiveness, no jealousy, no resentment. You know, peace mind, and that is mental happiness. So for us, you know, in the breathing meditation, you know, some of you may experience, you know, what can happen sometimes the first time you ever meditate. You know, I think the very first time somebody meditates can be an extraordinary experience. And many years ago, I taught meditation at a workplace, and one of the guys, he had been under incredible stress, and I had been doing these classes at lunchtime just for a few friends, really. And anyway, he came along, he sat down in the back, and I said, you know, just much like we did tonight, just focus on the breath. And he's sort of sitting here like this, and he just went like that. He sort of went into a swoon. And then 5 minutes, 10 minutes, then we sort of just stopped, and he got up and walked out of the room. About 6 months later, he invited me to his house for dinner, and he said he didn't quite understand what happened in the meditation, but he just went into this sort of sleep or swoon, and he said when he came out of it, he'd been under he'd had a big business that had gone bankrupt, and he was then working, and the business was still being resolved. He had a lot of issues at home, but he said whatever it was, that few minutes of clarity in his meditation, you know, that mixture of the, you know, not being agitated, you know, letting go of all of those disturbances. So in that, his mind was just totally consumed in all of his business problems, his home problems, just the issues about money and big, huge loans and lots of disturbances. And so that few minutes of peace, relative peace, I'm not saying it was ultimate peace, but it's relative peace, enabled him to somehow have the courage to make some really big decisions and you know, close up his business, address his debts, solve all the, you know, make an effort to change his life. And he became a lot happier because of that. And it always struck me that it was just the fact that he got 5 or 10 minutes of peace, of relative peace, and it just was such a benefit to him. Yeah. Let me share the first part of your story first, and then maybe we continue on. So, some 50 years ago, travelling through Southeast Asia, went to Penang. I don't know if many of you have been to Penang. So Penang's an island just off the coast of Malaysia, and walked into a large hall, and there was a very large Buddha at the one end of the hall. So, saying, you know, maybe 15 foot high or something. So, and not being a Buddhist, standing in front of the statue, just looking at it, suddenly felt a strong sense of peace and happiness, or peace anyway. a feeling of peace. Just looking at the statue, and stood for 20 minutes looking at that, and then that feeling has not left you. That's really what you're saying. Is that sense of tranquility. Yeah.
Some years ago, I happened to be going from Singapore to playing
Yeah, so he made a return visit some years later and had that same feeling again looking at the same thing, but also then at times can draw on and recreate that experience or that recollection. So, from a Buddhist point of view, the shape of the Buddha in the statues is like an embodiment, the embodiment of a whole lot of the Buddha's qualities. So if you actually analyse the shape of the statue and measure it up, you'll find that the arms are unnaturally long, that there's sort of disproportionate things in the image of a Buddha statue. And the face and the proportions, the curvature on the chest, these are all said to be aspects of the Buddha's actual body. And so there's a whole lot of sort of things that go into the shape of a well-made Buddha statue. So it is a useful practice for, and there's some people who do this. They'll come and they'll just sit and just look at that image. And so some people can have an experience of sort of like a blessing, some sort of feeling of peace and tranquility. Now, whether that comes from the person themselves or some sort of interaction between their mind and the appearance of the statue, who's to say what the process is. But it can be a useful practice if you're inclined to do that. So it can be quite beneficial. And then that feeling can be recollected. So, the first time I learnt to meditate was actually in Tahiti, at a Club Med many years ago in a yoga class. So I'd gone, not that I did any yoga, but I went to the yoga class, and I went once or twice, and there's several people there, and so doing a bit of yoga as you do on the beach in the resort in Tahiti. And then one day I went, and there was only me and the yoga teacher, and the yoga teacher decided to do a meditation, sort of, she decided to do a meditation, and it was just a breathing meditation. But I also had that experience of just sort of sitting and trying to meditate and just going into a swoon, into some sort of mental state. But I had that similar experience to my work colleague, in that it was a new mental experience that I'd never had before. Some sort of maybe some sort of peace or something that I had not experienced before, and it stayed. I can recollect it now. I can't recollect the actual feeling, but I can recollect that it was a new feeling in my mind that I had not experienced before, some sort of maybe clarity or peace or something. So meditation is really, really important to try to develop a daily practice and develop those qualities within your mind. So, and there's various ways you can do it. So, for instance, sitting in here and just staring at the statue of the Buddha is a meditation. That is also a meditation. Your mind absorbed in the image of the Buddha is a meditation as well. Yeah, good. Well, we're grateful. So thank you. Okay, so let's finish up. And so before you all jump and run out, we'll just finish with a quick meditation. So for us to come together and to listen, to think, to meditate, to share, to talk, is really very rare, and it's very valuable. So we can imagine that takes the form of a ball of white light in the middle of the room, and then bring it above your own head. So imagine that this collected benefit of everybody here tonight, this merit, what we call merit, comes above your own head and completely dissolves down into you, completely filling your body with light, and filling your mind with light, with clarity, completely dispelling all of your agitation and your mental problems, completely dispelling them, so that your body becomes clear and your mind becomes completely clear and peaceful. And then all of this sort of collects in the form of like a giant egg at your heart of white light. So the benefit of tonight collects into this white egg at your heart, light. All of the virtue or the benefit of us all here tonight is now at your heart. And then thinking everybody else here wants happiness and wants to be free from suffering, but they actually lack happiness and they encounter suffering. So imagine then from your heart you give out rays of light that go to everybody else here in the room, and the light enters their bodies and they become completely free of all physical suffering, and they come completely free of all mental suffering, and they become physically happy and mentally happy. Like a state of delight, of peace, of delightful peace. And then to your families, imagine them, visualize them sitting in front of you. So to your families, your close friends, exactly the same. You radiate out these rays of light and establish them in a happy physical and mental state. Even to your enemies or the people that you resent or dislike, annoy you, they also lack happiness and they encounter suffering, but they want happiness and they want to be free from suffering. So you send out the rays of light and visualize every living being stretched out in front of you, facing towards you, and put them all living creatures into the form of humans. Imagine them all sitting in front of you and facing towards you and radiating out the rays of light to every living being, who are all the same in wanting happiness and wanting to be free from suffering. But they are also all the same in not having happiness and encountering suffering. So imagine the rays of light go out like this. And as you do this, generate a great sense of delight and joy at even being able to visualize this. And then imagine that all these rays of light dissolve back into yourself and they absorb back into your heart. All right, so thank you very much. There will be some tea and coffee and some cake up in the dining room, and I will be back next Monday to develop this idea a little bit more. So thank you very much.